Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel and welcome to another reading vlog where I'm gonna be reading A Day of Fallen Night. So the Day of Fallen Night is either book 0 or 0.5 because I've seen both in the Roots of Chaos series, which is a series of the Priory of the Orange Tree. And so this is a prequel, and I read the Priory of the Orange Tree last year, I think, and I loved that book, and I have a reading vlog for it that I will link in the description. And also it was one of the few books that I've read where I really cared about a romantic relationship, and I don't like romance, that's why it's so rare for me to care, but I really did. So, I went into this book definitely expecting to care at least about a relationship, and you will see at the end if I did or not. But anyway, the point is, I loved that world, I loved the plot, I loved the characters, I loved everything about that book, so I had really high expectations for this. And this was also one of my anticipated releases for this year, and I don't think I've said it, but this is a fantasy book, a fantasy series, and I went into this knowing like the basics of the world because I read the other book, but nothing about the plot. Like I knew absolutely nothing of what was going to happen. And I just want to say that this is a spoiler-free reading vlog because this book came out only like a month ago, I think. So yeah, no spoilers, and let's just get into the video. Okay, so I am on page 182 and I have read part 1 of this book, and I am not confused, but like kind of overwhelmed with information, even though everything that we have learned so far is just basically like the setup for this book. Like we have learned about the characters and the world and like what their positions in the world are and their duties. But basically this book starts with a prologue, and in that prologue we have the births of 3 women basically, and they are Dumai, Glorian, and Siu, and they are all from different kingdoms, areas, whatever. So Dumai is from the east, Glorian is from the west, and Siu is from the south. And those are basically the same regions / kingdoms that we saw in the Priory of the Orange Tree. And I was already like familiar with, the world, even though this is before, like this is, I think 500 years-ish before the story of the Priory of the Orange Tree. But like I already know the world, and 2 of the 3 kingdoms / areas, they work pretty much in the same way, but the other is like it's very different. And I mean, it's probably going to be interesting to see. I mean, I'm hoping to see like it's changing from how it is now to how it is when like the story of the Priory takes place. So I'm hoping we get to see how that changes, because the other 2 are sort of similar. And so in the west we have Glorian, and she is the princess, the heir to the throne. And in the west they have the line of the queens they are thought to be the ones that keep the Nameless One, which is like the big evil thing, figure, trapped. And so they have to be alive and they have to produce another heir. And it's always one girl. Like they always have just one daughter who will be the next queen, and she will have a daughter who will be the next queen, and so on. And so, yeah, they are basically thought to be the people who keep the world safe, basically. They keep the evil away. And so Glorian is the next in line, and we see that, we know that her duty is basically to get married and have a daughter. And she doesn't really want to do that. I think she is, I want to say 15, but I might be wrong. And in the prologue, when we see her birth, before we see that her mother was called Savern, and I think that was the name of the queen in the other book, so that was fun. And she married a king from another kingdom and like saved both kingdoms basically. So both of Glorian's parents are like, very important figures, not only because they're the king and the queen, but because they saved two kingdoms. And so Glorian is kind of in their shadow, but she is happy to be there and she doesn't want to do her duty, basically. And then moving on we can go to the East now. The East is the one that I say that is most different. And I'm not going to say why, because maybe that would spoil something. So I'm not going to say it. But basically, we are following Dumai. And she has been living her whole life. And she's the oldest. I think she's 27. Again, I might be wrong. But I'm pretty sure she's the oldest of the three. She has been living in a temple in the mountains her whole life. But in the prologue, again, we saw that her mother she basically fled to that temple to protect Dumai. But we also see later, towards the end of this part, that basically her mother's past and technically like her own past has like caught up to her. And now she has a whole new duty. She has to leave the place, the only place she's ever known, because she has never left like the temple in the mountain. She doesn't know anything else, but she has to leave and go to a completely different place where she will have a very important duty to perform, surrounded by people she doesn't really know or trust. So again, she is not thrilled about her duty. And then finally we have Siyu, and she is in the south, and she is part of the Priory of the Orange Tree, which is basically they're a group of women who are trained as warriors, and they also like they have a tree that is like an actual tree, and it's a magical tree, and they are also like tasked with keeping the evil away as well. And so Siyu is basically an apprentice there, and she has not yet become, not spoiling how it happened, but she hasn't yet become a full like sister. And since the Nameless One has been gone, like trapped for a long time, the younger sisters, they're like losing their faith. They're wondering like if they still need to exist, like if Priory still needs to exist. So she, again, doesn't really want to do her duty, and she actually breaks a big rule, and she is on the run. And we see some like older sisters. They all call each other sisters, even like their birth mothers, their sisters, because technically like the mother is like not exactly goddess, but like their goddess kind of. So a few older sisters go after her. And while they're going after her, there is like a volcanic eruption, and it's the Dread Mount, which is basically the place where the evil, the darkness is sealed. And when the eruption happens, it's not dragons, they have another name for it, but it's like the evil dragons. Some of them are released from the volcano thing. And so, bad things are about to happen. And so, like I said, I feel like this was just the setup for everything that is about to happen. And we were learning, or in my case, relearning how this world works. And honestly, it was needed because I remember the basics, but a lot of it I really didn't. And some of the things are really funny because, they are like in the series, these books, but they can be read separately. Like technically they are standalones. And so it's funny because there are some things here, like some comments people make about the past and things that have happened or have not happened. And like if you have read The Priory, you know that they're wrong about some things, because at the end of that book, we learn about like what the actual past was, like what actually happened. So it's funny to see characters like believing or not believing things that like I know that either happened or didn't. So that is really fun actually. And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun getting back into this massive fantasy world. And I am a little overwhelmed with some of the information, but if I hadn't read The Priory, I would be extremely lost, because I went into this already like with some basic knowledge of the world. I mean, not basic, like a whole book, like a whole huge book of knowledge of this world. And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I really like the three main characters we're following. We're following others as well, but like I believe these are the three main characters, and I really like all of them. And I really feel bad for all of them as well, because they all, like, none of them wants to do their duty because their duties basically suck. So yeah, there's that. I really feel bad for them. And I am sure wild, crazy things are about to happen now that we have the basic information to go on. And yeah, so far having a lot of fun. I got through these almost 200 pages so fast because I am very into this. So I will read probably part 2 and come back to update. Okay, so I am on page 350, which means I've read part 2 of the book. And I think I'm gonna talk about what happened, like separating the different areas. And in this part, we got, I think in part 1, we had like one chapter from the north. And in this one, we had a few more actually, but they're connected to what is happening in the West, because the people are also connected. So I want to talk about both of them together, especially because I don't really have a lot to say about the West or anything, like without spoilers. So basically in the North, we are following a character who has like a mysterious origin. No one really knows like who they are. And it continues to be like mysterious because there's something that is affecting like everyone that comes in contact with that, but that character is not affected. So they continue to be mysterious. And I actually have a theory of who that character might be like connected to, like who they are, I guess. And I don't really know if my theory is right, because I don't know if like the timeline matches, because they didn't really say when something happened. So I don't know if like that character could be who I think they are, but I do think they are that. Anyway, that is pretty much everything in the North and West, except that like at the end of part 2, there was like a big attack. I mean, I want to say as well that I absolutely love Glorian's father. He is precious and I love him so much. But anyway, moving on, and we can go maybe to the East now. And so in the East, we learn a lot about the history of that area, and we actually see how things are changing and possibly like how they are becoming the way they are in the Priory book. And we see that Dumai, her duty was already like bad. She didn't want to do it. But now she's informed by someone that she might have to follow yet another path that will lead her in possibly a completely different direction than the one she was supposed to take. And she is, she doesn't want to disappoint anyone because, again, she's fucking precious. And she is trying to like do both things, but I feel like she won't be able to. And if she has to make a decision, I'm pretty sure of what she's gonna choose. And there is also a big attack in the east, and like I said, something that is making the world change in possibly a way that it will lead to the way it was in the other book. And now in the south, and that is where like we had more interesting things happening, at least like interesting to me. And so we are following the women from the priory, and we learn that just like the younger sisters, there are a lot of people like outside of the priory, but who know about the priory, that don't believe the priory is still needed. And then like an outsider comes, and I don't know if they should trust that person. I don't fully trust that person because they are asking a lot of questions. But on the other hand, it was kind of helpful because we got to learn a lot about the priory. And with we, I mean me. And I mean, I did appreciate that. And then we see also like Siu's, I think I said that she had make like she'd broken a rule before, and we see how the consequences of that are like affecting her, like what is happening. And it just really sucks because it's not like she did anything like actually bad, but it was against the rules, and the consequences are really fucking bad, and I just feel really bad for her. But honestly, we actually didn't really follow her that much. We have been following another woman from the priory who's called Tunuva, I think, and I fucking love her. She is an icon, and she is also so like nice, and yeah, I really love her. And I mean, I do appreciate that we got to follow her a lot because she is amazing. And then there was like something strange happening that might affect the whole world, so there is that. And that is pretty much where I'm at. And yeah, like both in the south and in the west, I am actually liking characters who are not like those three main characters that I thought were the main characters in the beginning. I'm actually liking the older characters more. Like I really, really like them. Not that I don't like the others, but like I like the older characters more. And I am loving the world building and like learning about the world and the magic, because some of the things we are learning, like a lot of them actually are different from what we learned in the other book. So I mean, you can see like it's the same world. The rules are pretty much the same. The evil is the same, but there are a lot of new things that I didn't know before, and I am loving to learn about them. And just like in the other book, I love how distinct all the kingdoms and regions are, because they all have different beliefs. They all have different ways of ruling and being ruled, I guess. And they are all just so different. And I love that. And yeah, I'm having a great time. It is not giving me the 5-star feeling, at least not yet, but I am having a great time with it. And I will read part 3, which is the longest part. It's like 350 pages. So, it's kind of long. That's like a whole ass book. But anyway, I will read that and I will be back. So I am on page 696, and that means I have finished part 3, which, like I think I said, was so goddamn long. And I feel like it's now I've gotten to a point where it's so hard to talk about what is happening without spoilers. But basically, we go through many like different quests, and more than one in each kingdom. And I think I'm going to start with the West, maybe. So in the West, there are a lot of changes happening because of like the aftermath of that attack that happened before. People are thinking that there is someone who might be like conspiring against the queen and basically like the whole world. And so they're gonna investigate that. And there is a whole other threat just looming, and not just on the West, like in the whole world, but it goes like through different phases. Like it's in a place and then it's in another place, but it's basically just looming over everyone, just at different points in time. And there was something that Glorian was saying, because like I said, her duty is basically to, continue her line of, the queens. And she was saying to her friend, can you imagine what that's like, to be seen only for the life you could make, not for the life you already possess? And like that is so sad. Because I mean, I knew that, but like hearing it that way, that is so sad, because that is literally what is happening to her. Now, moving on to the South, we see that there are also changes happening in the Priory and just the whole South. And we also get some iconic fight scenes. And in one of those fight scenes, someone uses like some kind of magic, but not the kind of magic that they're used to. And I was like, I know what that is because of the other book. And there are just so many things that I'm like, I know that. And that is so fun. And again, there is a threat that is looming over everywhere. And obviously the South is included. And finally now, moving on to the East. We basically follow Dumai as she learns a lot about the history of not only the East, but mostly the East. And it was definitely very fun to learn. Some of the things I already knew, some of them I didn't know and were very interesting to learn, because it just makes everything make even more sense. And yeah, I am really liking it. She was learning like not only history, but just how she could use that knowledge of the past to now fight the threat that is now happening. So that was really fun. I do have to say though that the book is moving slower than I expected. And I mean, it's not like I expected a over 800-page book to be like very fast paced, obviously not, but it's slower than I expected. I feel like it's slower than the Priory. I might be wrong, but that's like from what I remember, I feel like it is moving slower. And I mean, I do love all of the characters, so I don't mind just like, following them, like having conversations and whatever. Like I'm not bored. I haven't been bored ever reading this book, but I would like it to be a little faster. And also my theory of like the character's identity, it was right. So that was fun. And then there are other two characters that were like connected, like mentally connected. And I was pretty sure that they were connected. I just didn't know how. And the way in which they were connected was so cool. And I have another theory about another character, because that character reminds me of someone that we learned about in the other book. And I'm just like wondering if that is them, like, because that would also be really cool. And yeah, I am having fun, unlike all of the characters who are suffering. And I feel really bad for like the three main girls, because they're just suffering with like what they have to do. And yeah, I feel really bad for them. And also like Tunuva, she is definitely my favorite character. She is still absolutely iconic, but she is also suffering so much. And it is breaking my heart, because I just want to protect her at all costs. And obviously I can't. And she's going through it and I'm going through it. But having said all that, I am still enjoying it. Still not having the 5-star feels, and since I only have like 150 pages to go, I probably won't get them, but still really, really fun, really enjoying it. And I am very excited for this last part, because I feel like it will be very intense, very explosive. I'm sure there will be fight scenes, and yeah, very excited. I will finish it and I will be back. so I have finished the book, and there's not a lot that I can say for this last part because I obviously don't want to tell you how the book ended, but basically, like, my last theory was right, and we got some epic fight scenes, and we also learned a little more about the world, and we saw it change into kind of what it is in the book of the Priory of the Orange Tree, which was so fun. And the ending was, like, for me personally at least, and I think that will depend on how you feel about some things and some people, but for me personally, it was very bittersweet, and I am sad. I was really sad there for a second, but yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I can't really talk about much of what happened. So let's just go into my final thoughts about this book. So starting off with the characters, as we usually do, I really like every single character, which never happens. Like, there was one character that was like, sometimes I liked her, sometimes I kind of wanted to punch her, but you know, overall, I really liked everyone, and she was fine. Everyone else I really liked. And it was really fun to follow those three girls because they were learning a lot of the world, and like, we were learning with them. And so that was very like fun to like learn along with the characters, and also was kind of heartbreaking to know what they were all going through because, like I said, they had all their duty and obligations that they didn't want to do and that were not fair, but like they had to do them. So it was also kind of sad, and then I say kind of, I mean very sad. And then apart from those three girls, like, my favorite character, like I said, was Tinuva. Like, she was everything. She was so iconic, so badass, and also so precious. And I mean, she also suffered so much, and obviously I suffered with her. And also, there was actually one relationship that I cared about in this book, and I did not mention it because, like, I mean, I cared about it, but in the big scheme of things, it was not the most important thing going on. But I did care about a relationship, which almost never happens. So that's a win for me. And in terms of the plot, like I said, it was really fun to see like things changing into what I knew the world to be in the future. And speaking of, it was really fun when like I knew things that the characters were learning, and also I knew things that they don't even know yet, and I'm just like, oh my god, I know the future. And obviously I love that my theories were right, and I feel like the only problem I had was that since this was a prequel, I knew, like I said, I knew how the world would turn out, so I feel like the stakes were not like that high because I sort of knew like what would go right and what would go wrong. But like, if this was the first book I was reading in the series, then I would not know what the world would be like, and I feel like the stakes would be much higher. So that is the only like slight problem I had with it. And also, like, it wasn't as fast-paced as I wanted, but like I said, I really like the characters, so I didn't really mind just following them, like having conversations and like doing whatever. So it was still really, really good. I really, really enjoyed it. I loved being back in this fantastical world. And I mean, it was heartbreaking, and I love books that like can rip my heart out and like stomp on it. And I mean, it was not the most heartbreaking book I've ever read, definitely not, but it was still heartbreaking enough for me to love, you know? And so yeah, I had a great time with this book, and I gave it 4 stars. And I definitely want more books in this world because, like I said, just being in this world is so fun because like the world is so big and so like well developed, and all the kingdoms are so different from each other, and all the people are so different from each other, and I love being in there. I mean, I would not love being in there because, you know, it's dangerous and sad, but I love reading about it. And so yeah, had a great time with this book. And so this is everything for this week's video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, give it a like and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!